My billionaire husband said, "Meet my new love at dinner." Then I handed him the papers. Imagine sitting at a beautiful restaurant, thinking your billionaire husband is about to surprise you for your anniversary. The lights are low, the table is set, and you're smiling, waiting for him to say something romantic. But instead, he looks you in the eye and says, "Zoya, meet my new love." That's exactly what happened to me. But what he didn't know was that I didn't come to that dinner empty-handed. I came prepared, with papers that would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I love seeing all the places these stories travel. Let me take you back to that night. My name is Zoya Malik. I'm 35, a creative director living in Cape Town. I was married to Ryan Mendez for 9 years. He was charming, successful, and yes, very rich. He built a tech empire from the ground up, and I was there from the very beginning, standing beside him every step of the way. When he asked me to dinner at the Marble Room, I thought it was a surprise anniversary. That place meant something to us. It's where we went for our engagement dinner, where we celebrated big wins and shared dreams about the future. I wore my best dress, did my makeup with care, and even wore the perfume he once said made me unforgettable. But when I walked in and saw him sitting there, with someone else, my heart dropped. There she was, sitting next to him, smiling like she belonged at our table. She was young, polished, and clearly comfortable. Ryan stood up and said, "Zoya, this is Chloe. She's very special to me." Then, just like that, he said he wanted a divorce. He expected me to fall apart, maybe cry, maybe beg him not to leave. But I didn't do any of that. I just smiled and took my seat. Because what Ryan didn't know was that I already knew about Chloe. I had known for months. I had seen the signs, his late nights, the cold distance, the lies. I had quietly watched, listened, and waited. I had spoken to a lawyer. I had spoken to people who could find the truth he thought he had hidden. And while he thought he was controlling the story, I was writing the ending. So I reached into my purse and placed a thick envelope on the table. "You might want to read this before you finish your wine," I said calmly. That's when his smile disappeared. But I won't tell you what happened next. Not yet. Just know this. He came to that dinner thinking he had won. He left knowing he had just lost everything. For 9 years, I truly believed I was living a dream. The kind of life people admire from afar, the kind they post vision boards about. Ryan and I were that couple, the one people looked at and said, "They've got it all." And for a long time, I believed it too. We started from humble beginnings. When I met Ryan, he was just beginning to find his place in the tech world. He had big ideas, big plans, and a hunger I admired. I was already working in branding, building my career one campaign at a time. He used to say we were the perfect match. He built the tools, I gave them the story. We worked late nights side by side in cafes and co-working spaces, dreaming up our futures like two people who had nothing to lose. When his business started to grow, we grew with it. We moved into a beautiful penthouse overlooking the ocean, all glass windows and white marble floors. On Sunday mornings, we'd sip coffee on the balcony and laugh about the tiny apartment we used to share. We flew business class to Tokyo for New Year's, spent weekends in Lisbon, attended conferences in Dubai and Berlin. Wherever he went, I was there. And wherever I went, he supported me. Our love wasn't loud. It was solid. Or so I thought. We showed up to charity galas in matching designer outfits, smiled for the cameras, held hands under the table. My friends used to tell me how lucky I was. People envied us. Strangers complimented us. And through it all, I kept showing up for him, believing we were in this together. I knew the ins and outs of his work. I helped him build his brand. I stayed up at night reviewing presentations, giving him feedback, even rewriting his pitch decks when he was too tired to think clearly. I wasn't just a wife, I was his partner, in every sense of the word. Looking back now, I wonder when things started to shift. I can't point to one exact moment. It was more like small changes, like a slow leak in something airtight. At first, I didn't see it. Maybe I didn't want to. I was too busy making sure we stayed perfect on the outside to notice the small cracks forming underneath. But if I'm honest with myself, I think I did feel it. The way his eyes stopped lighting up when he talked to me. How his compliments turned into silence. How we could be in the same room, but feel miles apart. He stopped noticing the little things, the way I wore my hair, the perfume I wore just for him. And I stopped bringing it up. I told myself we were just busy. That life was hectic. That it would pass. I tried to be understanding. I gave him space. I filled in the gaps with patience. I believed that love meant endurance, and that every relationship had seasons. But while I was holding on, something inside him was pulling away. There were no fights, no slammed doors, just distance, coldness, and a growing silence I couldn't explain. Yet I still believed in us. I still believed that whatever it was, we could fix it. We had built too much together to fall apart now. At least, that's what I told myself. I see things clearer now. But back then, I truly believed our story was unbreakable. I believed I was still living inside the dream we had built together. I didn't realize I had already started living in the ending. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was just little things. Moments I brushed off because I didn't want to believe they meant anything. But looking back, they were signs, clear and sharp. I just wasn't ready to read them. Ryan began to change in subtle ways. He became harder to reach during the day. His text replies turned from full thoughts to quick one-word answers. Busy. Later. Can't talk now. I didn't question it at first. He was always busy. His job was demanding, and late nights weren't new. But this time, something felt different. His phone became a permanent fixture in his hand. He started keeping it face down on the table, something he never used to do. If it buzzed, he'd glance at it quickly and slide it into his pocket. Sometimes, he'd excuse himself to take calls, stepping onto the balcony or into another room, his voice low, almost like a whisper. When I asked who it was, he'd just shrug and say, "Work stuff." Then he'd move on, changing the subject before I could ask more. We used to share everything. Now, there were silences where conversations used to be. There was one evening that stayed with me. We were having dinner. Nothing fancy, just something simple I had cooked, and I asked how his meeting went that day. He didn't even look up. He mumbled, "It was fine," and kept scrolling on his phone. That might not sound like much, but I felt it. The way he dismissed me, the way he avoided my eyes. It wasn't about the answer. It was about how little he seemed to care that I had asked. Still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. I didn't want to accuse him of something without proof. I was raised to be patient, to think before reacting. And in my heart, I hoped I was wrong. But my instincts were louder than my hope. My late aunt, who helped raise me, used to say, "Never ignore a shift in tone. That's where the truth begins." Those words kept playing in my mind every time Ryan's voice went tight, or his replies turned short, or he smiled at me like I was just another person in the room. It was in the tone, the distance, the energy. I couldn't explain it to anyone, not yet, but I felt it in my bones. So I started paying attention. I stopped asking questions and started taking notes, mentally, quietly. I remembered the names he mentioned in passing, the restaurants that appeared on our shared credit card, even though we hadn't gone out in. I watched him move through our home like a guest, smiling when needed, present just enough to seem normal. I knew something was happening. I just didn't know what. But I wasn't going to sit around waiting for it to hit me in the face. I told myself I'd find the truth, one piece at a time. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was no longer blind. The truth didn't shout, it whispered. I remember the first thing I found. I was looking for a charger in Ryan's car when I opened the glove box and spotted a tube of lipstick. It was bright red, bold, and definitely not mine. I've never worn that shade in my life. For a moment, I just stared at it. It sat there like it belonged. That was the part that unsettled me most. How casually it rested among his things, as if it had a right to be there. I closed the glove box and said nothing. Not because I was unsure, but because I needed to be certain. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I needed more than suspicion. I needed facts. That same week, I hugged him goodnight like I always did, but this time, a strange perfume lingered on his jacket. It wasn't mine. It wasn't familiar. It was floral, sharp, expensive. Not the kind a random person wears to the office, and not the kind that fades quickly. It clung to him. I leaned in a second time, pretending to fix his collar, but really, I was confirming what I already sensed. Someone else had been that close to him. Still, I stayed quiet. I smiled through it. I made coffee like usual, kissed him goodbye, and waved from the balcony. Then I started looking. One afternoon, I was doing the laundry myself, something our housekeeper usually handled. She had taken the day off, and part of me wonders if fate planned it that way. In the pocket of his suit jacket, I found a hotel key card, the Hummingbird Suites. My heart froze. We had stayed there once, years ago, for our 3rd anniversary. It was one of our happiest memories. Seeing that name again brought a rush of emotions, none of them good. I searched the key card online. It was still active, booked under a different name, but the same room type we used to stay in. That was the moment I stopped hoping I was wrong. That was the moment it became real. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wasn't going to give him the chance to lie. I'd spent years being the woman who trusted. Now, I had to become the woman who confirmed. I started tracking everything, quietly, carefully. I reviewed our shared financial records, flagged unusual charges. Dinners at places I'd never been, gifts I never received, charges that didn't match his usual habit. I searched for names, cross-checked addresses, took screenshots. Every small detail became a piece of a puzzle I never asked to build. I began arriving early to places where I knew he'd, watching from a distance. Once, I saw him outside a restaurant, holding the door for someone who definitely wasn't a client. They laughed too closely. She touched his arm the way someone only does when they think no one's watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it had been going on, wondering how many lies had been wrapped in soft smiles and quick kisses. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply decided that I'd gather everything. Every receipt, every clue, every truth he thought I'd never find. Because I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was a woman preparing for war. The moment I decided to stop hoping and start acting, I knew I couldn't do it alone. This wasn't just a broken marriage. It was a situation that needed strategy, not emotion. I didn't want drama. I wanted results. So I called someone I'd met 2 years earlier at a branding and business conference, Aisha Khan. Aisha wasn't just a divorce lawyer. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made people straighten up without saying a word. Back then, we'd bonded over work and ambition during a panel break. I remembered her sharp insight, her calm energy, and the way she said, "Always protect your future, even when you think you've found forever." I never forgot that line. Now it made sense. When I called her, she didn't ask for the full story right away. She just said, "Come in. No one will know you were here." Her office was tucked inside a quiet building in the city, far from the usual legal districts. Intentional, discreet. I walked in with a folder full of receipts, screenshots, credit card records, and that hotel key card. She listened without interrupting, her pen moving silently over her notepad as I explained everything. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, looked me in the eye, and said, "You've already done the emotional work. Now let's do the legal one." She explained the importance of building a financial timeline. If Ryan was hiding money, misusing funds, or shifting assets to other names, we had to prove it with facts, not suspicion. That's when she introduced me to Adrian Pillay, a forensic accountant she'd worked with before. He wasn't what I expected, casual, a bit quirky, but sharp as a blade. His specialty was following the money, especially when it tried to disappear. Adrian took my scattered evidence and started connecting the dots. What I had found on my own was only the surface. He dug deeper, into business filings, property records, banking activity, and uncovered layers I hadn't imagined. Ryan had created shell companies registered under fake names. He'd quietly shifted money into offshore accounts in Mauritius, funneling profits away from his main firm. Some of the assets were even listed under his cousin's identity, someone I had always thought of as just another relative who showed up at birthday. What shocked me most was how long it had been going on. This wasn't something he started recently. Ryan had been preparing for a clean exit for years, hiding money while smiling across the dinner table. He wasn't just unfaithful to me, he was dishonest with his own business, with people who trusted him, and most of all, with the life we built. Every day, Adrian sent updates. Each one painted a clearer picture of a man I thought I knew. The picture didn't look like a husband. It looked like a criminal in a tailored suit. With Aisha guiding the legal steps and Adrian building the financial case, I finally stopped feeling powerless. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing. Ryan thought I was the woman who'd be blindsided, left behind. What he didn't realize was that I had already found the tools to dismantle everything he tried to hide. And I was just getting started. From the outside, nothing had changed. I still smiled at Ryan's business events, nodded politely at investors, and posed for photos at charity dinners like everything was normal. I was dressed in designer gowns, laughing at all the right moments, and standing proudly by his side like the picture-perfect wife everyone expected. No one could see what was happening behind the scenes, because I didn't let them. Inside, I was on a mission. While Ryan played the role of the successful husband, I was building a quiet, methodical case. Every event we attended together gave me more information: who he spoke to, which employees he favored, where money was subtly shifting. I kept notes, watched patterns, collected details no one else noticed. I played the part he expected, and he never suspected I knew the truth. Adrian, the forensic accountant, worked tirelessly. Each day, he uncovered more. The list of financial irregularities kept growing. It wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about money. A lot of it. Ryan had used company funds to rent a luxury apartment registered under someone else's name. That same account paid for designer handbags, weekend getaways, and even the full tuition for Chloe's MBA at a private university. He didn't even try to hide it well. The transactions were messy, scattered between personal and corporate expenses. He probably thought no one would question it. Or maybe he thought he was too smart to be caught. Either way, Adrian kept pulling the thread, and with every document, the truth unraveled further. What started as a betrayal became something much bigger. This wasn't just a husband cheating on his wife. It was a CEO misusing business assets, committing fraud, breaking laws. The apartment alone was enough to raise red flags. But the education payments? That was proof of long-term planning. Chloe wasn't just a fling. She was part of a future he was quietly building without me, using stolen resources to do it. I stayed quiet. I kept showing up, acting normal, never giving Ryan a reason to doubt me. At night, I sat in my home office, organizing files, backing up emails, preparing everything for the day I would finally take my power back. I didn't need to shout or throw things or beg him to stay. I had no interest in revenge born from emotion. I wanted justice backed by proof. No one suspected a thing. Not his business partners, not Chloe, and certainly not Ryan. He believed he was getting away with it. He thought I was still in the dark, still playing the role of his loyal, blind wife. But I wasn't blind anymore. Every lie, every hidden transaction, every stolen dollar was being recorded, filed, and timestamped. The foundation he thought was solid was already crumbling beneath his feet. And he had no idea that I was the one holding the match. The day I received the audio recording, I sat alone in my office, a quiet space I had turned into a war room over the last few weeks. My billionaire husband thought I was still in the dark. He thought his secrets were safe. But the moment I pressed play, I knew he'd handed me the final piece. The private investigator I hired had done his job well. No dramatics, no speculation, just facts. He placed a small recorder in a quiet corner of the rooftop bar, where Ryan and Chloe often met. The voices were clear, the laughter louder than it should have been. Chloe's voice came first. Smooth, sharp, careless. "Zoya's completely clueless," she said, followed by a smug laugh. "Sitting in that fancy penthouse, thinking her billionaire husband still loves her. So cushioned, so protected. She has no idea he's already planning to drop her like yesterday's news." I didn't pause. I let it play. The words weren't surprising, not anymore, but the confidence in her tone was. What stayed with me wasn't just what she said, but what Ryan didn't. He didn't correct her, didn't say my name, didn't speak a word in my defense. That silence hit harder than anything. They thought I was blind to everything. They thought I was still just the supportive wife, walking around his events like a polished ornament. But what they didn't know was that I had already pulled the threads behind the scene. I'd watched Ryan turn from partner to stranger, from loyal to reckless. And while he smiled for cameras, I collected the evidence he thought didn't exist. My billionaire husband believed no one could touch him. He moved money like it was air, apartments, trips, tuition fees, all paid from company accounts, all hidden beneath layers of deceit. Adrian had uncovered every trail. Aisha was building the case with sharp precision. I was no longer wondering. I was preparing. But this recording wasn't about money. It was about intent. It was the clearest proof that Chloe didn't just help destroy a marriage, she mocked it. And Ryan didn't stop her. He allowed her to rewrite the story of who I was. To him, I was part of the past, quiet, soft, forgettable. They both underestimated me. They forgot I helped build the very image he was using to impress her. They forgot I knew the brand, the numbers, the board members, the hidden corners of his empire. They forgot that I had stayed quiet not out of weakness, but strategy. When the recording ended, I didn't need to listen again. I backed it up twice, labeled it, and added it to the growing folder marked Final Strike. There were no more doubts. No more hesitations. My billionaire husband had made his move. Now it was my turn. Ryan invited me to dinner at the Marble Room. He said he wanted to talk, just the two of us. The way he asked was careful, rehearsed. He picked a place full of memories, probably hoping that the nostalgia would soften whatever blow he planned to deliver. But I already knew why I was there. I just needed to let him believe he was in control, one last time. I arrived right on time, dressed in a deep red dress that flowed like confidence. Not loud, not dramatic, just sharp, striking, and impossible to ignore. He stood when he saw me, pretending to be calm, pretending everything was normal. I gave a polite smile and sat down across from him. I didn't ask questions. I already had the answers. Then she appeared. Chloe. She walked over with that same smug look I'd seen in the photos. The one she wore like a trophy. She didn't say hello. She didn't need to. Her presence said enough. Ryan cleared his throat and leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to talk in person," he said softly. "We've shared so much. I'll always appreciate what we had. But things have changed. Chloe and I, we're moving forward together. I hope we can handle this like adults. I want a respectful separation." I looked at him as he spoke, watching his words land gently in the space between us like he was offering something generous. He truly believed he was being noble. So I smiled. Then, slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick folder. I placed it on the table with care. No rush, no reaction, just precision. He looked confused but curious. He opened the folder and began flipping through the pages. 1, 2, 3. The confusion disappeared. Then came silence. His face dropped as he read through the document. Bank transfers, fake invoices, property records, offshore accounts, evidence of company funds redirected toward personal luxury, tuition fees, flights, gifts, a forensic paper trail, every move traced, every lie exposed. Chloe leaned in to see for herself. Her jaw tightened. "What is this?" he asked, voice low. "It's everything," I said. "Everything you thought I'd never find. Everything you tried to hide." His lips parted, but no words came out. I looked at Chloe. I heard the recordings. You called me clueless, I said, keeping my tone even. Turns out I was just quiet. Neither of them spoke. I stood up, adjusted my purse on my shoulder, and gave Ryan one last look. You wanted a peaceful end. So here it is. This is the last time we meet like this. Then I turned and walked out, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. He thought he'd walked me into an ending. But really, I'd just written my beginning. Documents reveal Ryan's embezzlement, hidden properties, and fraudulent transfer. But this wasn't just about me anymore. It had already gone beyond our marriage, beyond betrayal. What sat in that folder carried the weight to destroy his entire empire. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence stretch as they stared at the document. Ryan's eyes darted from one page to another, hands trembling slightly. Chloe hovered behind him, her expression tight, confused, then slowly shifting into fear. Still, I said nothing. Letting them read was more powerful than any accusation. Ryan's breathing grew shallow as he flipped through the files. His lips moved slightly, whispering numbers to himself, scanning familiar account names. Only now they weren't just private. They were exposed. Finally, I leaned forward and spoke in a calm, even voice. This isn't just paper. By now, the board knows. So does the SEC. Ryan froze. Chloe blinked. Wait, what do you mean the board knows? I turned to her. I sent everything this morning, along with a summary of your expenses, including the condo, tuition, and those flights to Milan. Her face went pale. Ryan leaned back, rubbing his face like he was trying to erase the moment. You reported me? He asked, barely able to speak the words. I didn't answer directly. I didn't need to. Instead, I placed another envelope beside the folder. You'll be hearing from the auditors soon, probably by tomorrow morning. They're freezing accounts connected to the misused funds. Chloe looked like she might get sick. Ryan opened the second envelope, scanned a few lines, and then dropped it like it burned. This could collapse the company, he said hoarsely. I sat back in my seat. I know. He looked up at me, something in his eyes crumbling. Zoya, please, we can fix this. Chloe was already on her feet. This is insane, she said under her breath. You said everything was protected. You said no one could trace anything. Ryan didn't even look at her. I stood quietly and gathered my purse. You both made your choices. Now you get to live with them. Ryan reached out, but I stepped back. His hand hung in the air, unsure, helpless. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I simply walked out, leaving behind the folder, the silence, and the end of everything he tried to hide. Outside, the night was cool, steady, quiet. Nothing like the storm I'd just left behind. And for the first time in a long time, I breathed without weight on my chest. Ryan was sentenced to 3 years in prison for corporate fraud and embezzlement. The trial was quiet, handled behind closed doors to limit media damage, but the outcome was clear. His empire crumbled faster than anyone expected. Chloe disappeared from the public eye, as if she'd never existed. No press, no statements, just silence. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. I had already won before the verdict was read. After the divorce, I was granted 65% of the marital assets. Not just the money, but the properties, the stocks, and most importantly, the shares in the very company he tried to steal from me. I didn't use them to get even. I used them to start fresh. I rebranded my marketing firm completely. This time, I made it about more than business. I focused on helping women, especially those rebuilding after betrayal, find their voice, their power, and their place in the market. It became more than a job. It became a purpose. I left the penthouse. It held too many ghosts. Instead, I bought a warm, peaceful home by the Cape shoreline. Every morning, I walk along the beach with a cup of coffee and the sound of waves reminding me I survived. I healed, and I began again. There were no dramatic endings, no fiery speeches, just quiet strength and peace. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. The best revenge isn't rage. It isn't destruction. It's rebuilding a life so magnificent, it makes betrayal look like a blessing.